Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name's Christina and today I'm doing the palette tag, which was created by Allie, Glines, and Samantha March. So I'm going to be doing the eyeshadow palette tag, and I'm really excited to talk about some eyeshadows because lately we've been really dedicated to my eyeshadows and I figured they need more spotlight. So this is just a tag where you go through all of your eyeshadow palettes. I'll have all of the categories down below as well as all the eyeshadow palettes that I can listed and linked for you in case you are curious about any of them. And before I jump into it, definitely make sure to hit that subscribe button if you are interested in more content like this. I do talk about makeup quite frequently. I'm also a project panner and I do spooky videos on Sunday. So if you want any of that, definitely make sure to hit that button. And now let's get into this. So the first category is my newest palette, and that would be this little guy. I actually do have a new palette coming on Wednesday. It will arrive for delivery on Wednesday, but at the time of recording this, this guy is my newest palette, which you guys would have seen in my trying new makeup video from August. I'll have it linked in a card for you up here. But I tried this palette and it was super disappointing. This is one of the e.l.f. bite-sized palettes, and this is the Acai, I think. Yeah, Acai one. It's the purple one. Everyone told me that this one is probably the worst one out of the entire set, so I just had really bad luck or bad taste, or both. I really wanted it because the purples look so pretty. You guys know how I feel about periwinkle and purple. It's like one of my favorites. I'm always looking for it, and this color right here I was really hopeful for, but it was super disappointing and it made me really scared to try any of the other ones, even though these are probably the most affordable palettes ever. Next palette is my oldest palette. Now this is something that I don't think I've shown on my channel in a really long time, but I kept it for sentimental reasons, which I know is silly, but I don't touch it. It literally is on my organizational shelf for all of my makeup. It sits at the top of it and I just see it every now and again, but this was the first major palette that I bought right before I started my channel, and I started my YouTube channel in December of 2015, I believe. And I bought this right beforehand with a gift card that my mom got me to Sephora, and it was the biggest purchase I'd ever made, and this is what really got me into makeup. So I keep it for that reason. And it is the Kat Von D Mi Vida Loca palette. And it's kind of disappointing that I've never shown this on the channel, really. I did, some of my first videos were using this palette, but they are all privated now because we've come a long way in the filming and the processing of all of my videos. But it's just a rainbow palette. This is like the OG rainbow palette, and I just thought the packaging was so beautiful. At the time, Kat Von D, we didn't know about Kat Von D like we do now, but I really admired her art style. I will stand by this. I know we have all canceled Kat Von D and I know they're trying to rebrand now, but there is no one else mainstream on the market who has art design like she does. So for like all of us alternative, gothic, or edgy people, I hate using those terms, but you guys know what I mean. There's nothing quite like her aesthetic on mainstream market, so it is a little disappointing, but I kept this because I just think it's such a beautiful palette. I loved the idea of it being a record. That's the design of it, is that it's supposed to look like a record. And if you know me in real life, then you know I'm a huge music buff. I love music. I don't talk about it much here, but I've always been really into music. That's how most of me and my friends bond, is over bands and music and stuff like that. So this just kind of spoke to me. I thought it was beautiful and I have a lot of memories with it, but yeah, you guys never see it, so we've never got to chat about the Mi Vida Loca palette, but I do love that palette. Next is my most affordable palette, which I guess we're just gonna have to show this guy again. This is the e.l.f. bite-sized palette again. Pretty sure this was only $3, pretty sure, or $2. It's the most affordable palette I own. Honestly, this is the most bang for buck you're gonna get. So we've already talked about her, but that's definitely the most affordable. And then as far as my most expensive palette, I don't actually own many expensive palettes, but I do have it in singles. The most expensive palette I've probably ever bought is actually here. I have depotted it. This is one of the Mothership Pat McGrath palettes. This was the red one that came out for Christmas 2018 or 2019, I believe. It was the most expensive palette I'd ever bought. I have a hard time spending money on palettes. I don't like doing it. I have a hard time just spending money generally, so I don't like doing that too often, but that's probably my most expensive palette I've ever bought, minus the Mi Vida Loca. I think the Mi Vida Loca was also around the same price, but I had a gift card for that one. That one feels a little bit different, but the Pat McGrath I bought, and I felt weird about it. And then I depotted it and felt even more weird about it. It did clear up some space too. I don't use the shadows as much as I thought I would either, so there's that. Made me feel bad about it all over again. Favorite everyday palette This is something that changes quite frequently, but I wanted to talk about the one I used mainly today, and I reached for it a good bit. I think you can still purchase this on their website, so I don't feel bad listing this. I know some people said it's not, but this is the Pixi and it's Judy Time palette. It's just a neutral palette. I used it on my lids today minus the turquoise. The turquoise is a different shade from my Pan That Eyeshadow series. But as far as like an everyday natural palette, this one I use a lot. I travel with it a lot just because it's really versatile and it just has all of the everyday shades you need. And I feel like you would work on most skin tones as well. It's, again, just, it's a really nicely done palette. And I feel like people don't talk about Pixi formula enough, but the Pixi eyeshadow formula is really, really nice. It's not the absolute like most pigmented, but not everyone wants super pigmented shadows. So I find that these are easy to build up and yet blend really well. It's really beautiful. I love this palette. Next palette is my most colorful palette. Now I do have a few, but the standout one for me and the one I always think about when I'm like, oh, I want to use color is my Zulu palette from Juvia's Place. I adore this palette so much. This was my first palette I ever bought from Juvia's Place, and it's literally so beautiful and colorful. For me, I know some people have rainbow palettes, which I guess the Mi Vida Loca palette would fit into rainbow, but when I think of color, I think of this palette every time as far as my collection. And Juvia's Place shadows are so good. Just so good. I can't get enough of them. All of these shades are beautiful. I really, really like the pink and the purple right here. This whole row of green is great. This yellow is wonderfully pigmented. I know a lot of times I have a problem with yellows not quite showing up pigmented enough for me because I'm really, really fair. So a lot of yellows do kind of just sheer out too much on me. This yellow, however, beautiful. It's probably my favorite colorful palette that I own. Smallest palette is the next one, and I know I've already talked about this guy, but I will mention another small palette I have because it's just so darn cute. And it's this little guy. This is the Makeup Revolution Donut palette. This is the Strawberry Donut, and it has 5 little shades on the inside. It's small, but it is a little bulky, obviously, because it's quite thick. It's a thick donut, but it is still a relatively small palette. It has a beautiful mirror on the inside, and the shades are actually really, really nice. I think they just came out with like hamburger palettes as well, which I thought were really cute, but I do love the little squishy donut. It did at one point, it was scented at one point. It's kind of lost its scent, but it was scented at one point, which the 90s kid in me gets really excited about anything that's scented because that's just nostalgic. I feel like all of the scratch and sniff stickers, I'm into it, but it doesn't smell anymore. But I do love this. As far as another little palette in my collection, this guy, definitely better than this guy, but I do like these. Definitely give these a go. There's a lot of different like scents to them. There's like a chocolate donut, a blueberry donut, all kinds of stuff. My biggest palette, other than the Mi Vida Loca, I think my biggest palette is definitely the BH Cosmetics Zodiac palette, which is again another one of my favorites. The shades in these are just, whew. I've sang the praises of this palette many times. The formulation of these is so spot on. It's beautifully pigmented, easy to blend. They all work really well together. The color combinations I think are great. There's so many different looks you can make with this. This is hands down one of my favorite palettes ever. Just ever. And I got it at TJ Maxx for like $8, which was a steal. I would full-heartedly pay full price for this. No questions asked. Like if I was to lose this, I'd buy it full price. I don't care. It's so good. And as you can see, we've been working on some of the shades. So I do have pan in this palette, and it still brings me so much happiness and joy. These baked shimmers on the outside, ooh, so good. I can't get enough of this palette, honestly. She's big and beautiful, and I don't know what I would do without her. The next palette is the one that holds your best memory or your favorite memory, and for me, it's this guy. If you've been here for a while, you know what this palette is. This is the palette that I used on my wedding day, and it's just a beautiful neutral palette. This is the Persona Identity, the original. I know they've rebranded it and reformulated it now, but this is the original. And as you can see, I have a lot of pan in this. It is hands down one of my best memories as far as palettes. I mean, again, I used this when I got married and it makes me happy every time I look at it. I do use this typically on my anniversary as well, which we've only been married for 2 years, but there's plenty of time to have some more memories, I guess, with it, but it's just, it's so pretty. This is a lot more pigmented than a lot of my other ones. I feel like the pigmentation on this is a lot stronger, but it still blends really well. I have no issues with this creasing or falling off of my lids or fading throughout the day. Overall, stunning. Again, this is the old version, so I don't know if the new formulation is just as good, but as far as the old one, I love it. Next palette I'm going to talk about is one that's worth the hype. I had to think about this for a while because I feel like trends come and go so quickly on the internet now that it's hard to even know what's hyped anymore. I am really bad at keeping up with all of the new stuff coming out. I know something that was pretty hyped and I feel like no one talks about it anymore, so I feel like people would disagree with me, but I know the Tribe palette by Juvia's Place was really hyped when it was first released, and I know a ton of us were talking about it, and now I feel like no one really talks about it. For me though, I do think this was worth the hype if you don't have many greens in your collection. I think especially like this shade right here, the shimmer, is the coolest inner corner highlight ever, because it's a shimmer silver with a green base. I use this as an inner corner highlight a lot in my green looks because it ties it all together while still giving you an intense like shine to the inner corner. It's a really cool shade and something that I don't have in any other palette. And overall, it's Juvia's Place, so it just, the pigmentation's there for everything. Also, we have like this neon greeny yellow shade, and it's just so beautiful and neon, and even for someone like me who's really fair, it shows up a good bit. But I can only imagine how this looks on darker skin tones. I bet it's absolutely stunning. It's just such a cool shade. I don't see neon shadows included in palettes very often unless they're specifically doing neon. So it's just really cool to have like a normal palette with a neon shade in it. But yeah, for me, I think this palette was totally worth the hype. I don't know if anyone's really talking about it anymore. I think this one is also a green shift too, isn't it? I've like swatched everything in this palette. This is like a gold to green shift, and again, something very different than what we see. Like, look how cool that is. It has like a almost like I've been rusting outside vibe to it, and it's just really cool. Is anyone still talking about this palette? If they're not, they should be, because it's just a really well done, cool palette. And the color story is really unique and just good generally. Next palette is one that is not worth the hype, and if you've been on my channel, you're gonna know what I say, and it's probably contradictory to everything else anyone else is gonna say, but we all know I have a tiff with this palette, and I can't bring her into this video without talking smack. It's the Born to Run. Me and her have a tumultuous relationship, and I have to throw her in this section because I'm annoyed with her. This palette was hyped so much, which is why I ended up purchasing it, but she gets rolled into every eyeshadow palette bingo or eyeshadow roulette or pan that eyeshadow series. She gets rolled in every time, and I'm tired of her hogging all of the attention, so I just want to smack talk her for a little bit, and that's why this guy's here. But at the end of the day, it is actually a really good palette, and it technically is probably worth the hype, but not if you're doing challenges. She's not worth the hype then, because she will come and ruin your day every day. That's all I have to say about her. The next one is my favorite palette from my favorite brand. I don't really have a favorite brand when it comes to eyeshadow palettes, really. I have some that I don't know, I tend to just go for different types of brands, so I don't really have like a favorite from a specific brand, but I will talk about this palette because you guys know how much I like it, and I haven't talked about it in a while, and it's my Picante Carity palette. This is just a perfect fall palette in my opinion, and as you can see, it has gotten a lot of love on my channel, or just in life in general. There is considerable pan in it. It's just a beautiful palette. I haven't tried enough from Carity to say that it's my favorite brand in any way, but this is definitely one of my favorite palettes, and I feel like this doesn't get enough love on the internet anymore, and I don't know why. It's just, it has everything you need. And the shadows are really nice and beautifully pigmented, easy to blend. The color stories all work. Every single row is a good like combination, but you can of course mix and match as well. So it's pretty user friendly. You can also do it by quads, up and down. It's just a really nice palette, and I think it's good for all levels from beginner to expert level. It's just a nice one, and I feel like not enough people appreciate it, so thought I'd throw that one out. And then the last section is my most used palette, which, surprise, surprise, it's this guy. Just kidding. Well, not technically. The Born to Run pops up way too much, but probably otherwise, I feel like the palette that has the most pan in it is my Persona, so I guess you could say that that is probably my most used. But I do reach for this one a good bit. I also reach for my BH Cosmetics Zodiac palette a lot, and I also reach for my Frinkation a lot. There's no pan in the Frinkation yet, but I do reach for this one a good bit, especially for like these browns right here at the beginning for blending. It blends almost anything, and since those shadows are so like buttery, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. If I've fudged up a look, I can go in with the Francation and clean it up really well. I think those are probably my 3 most used. As far as pan, yeah, it's definitely the Persona and then the Born to Run. And that, guys, is the entire eyeshadow tag or eyeshadow palette tag. I feel like I talk about my eyeshadows a good bit, and here lately I've been a little bit more creative as far as my eyeshadow looks, so it feels good to talk about them exclusively and kind of share a little bit more about my eyeshadow palettes because I do enjoy them. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up down below. Also make sure to hit that subscribe button before you leave, and remember, there is always magic to be found, and I hope that means I see all of you guys in my next video. Bye!